Hello everyone, I am Tessellating Hexagons, and yesterday, for the first time in 10 years, there was a national final for Montenegro. Now, I don't really have anything to say about that other than congratulations, it sure was a national final. It was won by Vanja Radovanović with the song Inje, which means hoarfrost, which is like, you know when it's so cold outside that little crystals start to form on like spiderwebs and stuff? Yeah, that. It's presented completely in Montenegrin, and music and lyrics by Vanja Radovanović, which I swear that's going to trip me up more times than I'm comfortable to admit. Radovanović. It's not that difficult to say unless you're me, apparently. So, first impressions here. Well, I wasn't able to actually watch the Montenegrin national final, which is a bit of a shame. It was just due to the timings not really working out for me. So my first impressions were based on the winner's reprise, which that suffered from technical issues from what I've seen. That is to say, the audio quality wasn't great, and the microphone sort of misbehaved at the start. There was some really nasty feedback, but I've since found a better quality video of his actual competing performance, so all is well in the end. So, yeah, this is a smart, classy little Balkan ballad, and I tip my hat to Montenegro for sending it. Granted, I don't really know which songs it was up against, but I'd imagine that they were probably of the same level of quality, so yeah. One thing that I've always admired about the Montenegrin delegation is their dedication to sending something completely different every single year. They've tried pop rock, they tried Ralph Siegel, they've tried Rambo Amadeus, and dubstep, and Jelko, and Slavko, and every time they've learned something from their experience and applied it to their next year. It's really admirable, and not enough countries do that. This year, it may be another ballad in the same vein as 2014 and 2015, but, well, for one, both of those other years they qualified, and for another, this is, as I said, their first national final since 2008, and the first time that their song has been chosen by a national final since 2007, which was their debut as an independent country. So there's due credit here. But before I get too deep into that, let's look at why you might like this song. Honestly, I think the main reasons people might like this, I think its biggest appeal, can be found within the same sort of school of thought that attracted people to Amar Pelos Dois. The song is simple, but emotionally intense, and it's presented in the native language of the singer. As seems to be the way with Montenegrin ballads, I always find that even though I don't speak the language and so I can't really understand the words without looking them up separately, I always find myself able to understand what the singer wants me to feel. And this is no exception. In fact, in and of itself, you might like this song simply because it's a good old classic orchestral Balkan ballad. It ticks all the boxes of what you might expect from a Montenegrin Eurovision song, provided that your expectations aren't coloured by some of their more recent offerings. Sure, it isn't as flashy as Space, it's not as noisy as The Real Thing, or as overwhelming as Igranka, but I don't think it needs to be. In place of anything too aggressive, we've got this beautifully calm, collected, professional set of vocal stylings from Vanja, who sounds like he's been doing this for his entire life and then some. From the writing, the composing, the performing, all of it, he's got it on lockdown. If nothing else, even if you're not a fan of the song or the genre, you've still got to admit he's a great singer. And that talent plays an important role in the final minute of the song especially, where there's this emotive, really powerful build-up that moves towards a swelling reprise of the refrain before pulling into the ending. It's a textbook demonstration of how this genre is supposed to work, or in my experience it is anyway. And it's an enviable effort. For the first time in a few years, Crna Gora is really putting everything into showing us how it's done, and for that, I tip my hat to you. Well done. But just because I have plenty of good to say about the song doesn't mean that you're required to fall in love with the song by any means. So let's look at the other side. Realistically, depending on your tolerance for this sort of thing, it may be a technically impressive example of its genre, but on the other side of that same coin, it isn't really anything we haven't seen before in that style. Of course, there's no requirement for Eurovision songs to push the envelope and break new ground with every song that's submitted, but it tends to help the results that they get if each country does do that. A part of that is, if you're not into this sort of thing, or if you're impatient, or if you just prefer upbeat numbers, this song doesn't really get going. So depending on your taste, you might find it boring, you might not, but you might, so, you know, something to consider there. For that matter, the overall style might just be too stripped back for your tastes, and if that's the case, then that's fine, you're allowed that opinion. This isn't necessarily a genre that benefits from being overproduced, mind you, but that doesn't mean that it has to go fully minimal necessarily. Of course, it could be more minimalist than it is, and it could also be less minimalist than it is. There's some variance here. I think they've struck a good balance, but there is always room for disagreement, if that's how you feel. That being said though, if this song does bore you as it currently is, which that's fine, you are allowed to think that, just because I don't agree doesn't mean you're not allowed to think it, I would recommend that you give the song another listen once we have a full studio quality version of it at our disposal. You might be misled by the audio quality of the national final, or anything else for that matter, that could give you a false impression of the song. I'm not saying that that is the case, I'm not saying that you can't be trusted with a live performance, I'm just saying when we get a studio version, give it another try, see how you feel. If you still feel the same way, that's fine. If you change your mind, great, you found another song that you like, and that's a good thing. Either way, I have great expectations for how this song's going to turn out when it hits the stage in Lisbon. As things currently stand though, well, let's take a look at my scores out of 10 and see what that reveals. After my initial listen, as I said, I did find a slightly better quality video of his competing performance as opposed to his winner's reprise, so I found a version that didn't have the microphone nonsense at the beginning and the audio was a bit better quality. So basing my opinions on that, I'd say this gets an 8. I am low-key a sucker for well-executed Balkan ballads, I admit, so much like Moj Svijet and Adio, I'm quite happy to listen to and enjoy this one personally. I do think that it's something that I wouldn't listen to on a regular basis, just because I feel as though I'd have to be in the right sort of mood to justify it. Like, if I go into it in the wrong sort of mood, I might not fully appreciate what this song does, and I know, I want to give this song due credit, so I might limit myself listening to it, which is a weird feeling. I only get that with some songs. But this, on paper, it's beautiful, it's dramatic, it's well presented, so good on you, Montenegro. I do like it. I want my mood to complement the song so that whenever I listen to it, I fully appreciate what I'm listening to. Does that make any sense? Now, on the technical side of the scale, I would say this one earns an 8 there as well. As I said before, this is a perfect demonstration of everything one can expect from a top-tier Balkan ballad. Now, you would have thought that that would earn it a perfect 10 in this department, but not quite. As it currently stands, it's not quite as accessible to wider audiences as, say, Adio from 2015. Though I'm not really sure what could be done to adjust that without compromising the song as an overall package. Similarly, it does nothing new within the genre, which isn't a bad thing in and of itself, but it does somewhat limit the song's appeal when it's hard to distinguish it from its contemporaries. It's a seal of quality in this case, but it can also be a limiting factor, so there is that to bear in mind. Nevertheless, is this a sign of Montenegro moving in the right direction? Well, I mean, sort of? The whole truth is, like I said before, I do like how Montenegro consciously chooses to keep doing different things at Eurovision, even when they've found something that works. They even came right out and said in 2016 that after 2 years of qualifying with something that they were quite confident in, they wanted to try something else, something different, rather than just playing it safe year after year, and really good on them for that. That is how it's done. So this would be a neutral move in a good place, because they are already in that good place as far as attitudes go, but I should give extra credit here for their move towards having a national final instead of an internal selection. Now, that's not always a good step, but in this case, I think, well, I don't want to insult Slavko from last year, because he really is an artist, but it did seem like this is the next logical step for Montenegro, to look to the public to have the final say after, you know, learning from their previous attempts. So the approach is the same in terms of attitude, but they have taken that next step and they've applied what they've learned from previous years, and they want to have the expert opinion of the public on what they want to hear represent them. So on that grounds, I'd say it's an improvement. But just because it has the public seal of approval back home, does that mean it'll qualify? Well, there is a voice in my head saying that I really shouldn't get my hopes up with this one, simply because the Balkan ballad is a rather esoteric genre. Most countries will hear it as just another male ballad, rather than anything else, and of the countries likely to fully appreciate Vanja's song, only Serbia is in the same semi-final, so it will be fighting a bit of an uphill battle to reach the top 10. However, do remember that Montenegro's first and second of their 2 qualifications in history were off the back of similar songs of this genre, and Serbia, Croatia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina weren't even taking part in 2014 and they still qualified. So it's not impossible for the rest of Europe to find a place in their hearts for this song. With the right effort, and especially with the current public opinion being what it is about these personal, own language, emotional stories at Eurovision, I think this might just work out for Montenegro after all. We will have to wait and see though, but I have quiet confidence that people will at least understand the beauty that the song's trying to convey. We'll just have to see if people are so moved that they vote for it on the night. I don't know what to expect just yet, but I will say I have been and will continue to be Tessellating Hexagons, and to Montenegro I say very good luck to you. We'll see what happens when you hit the stage in Lisbon.